and welcome to my Tarot and Oracle deck collection series. This video has been a long time coming, but since I've been traveling around, I have had a lot of my decks packed away. This has been a really hard video to film. So I'm actually going to be moving again soon, but I currently have all my decks with me and they're currently all out, so I thought this was the time to do it. So I'm going to probably do a couple videos. I'm probably going to do my tarot first and then my oracle deck second. So if you guys like this video or have any questions about it, please comment down below any deck questions you have. If you like this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Also, if you want to check out my Etsy shop, I have personal tarot readings that you can purchase. I have clothing and crystal jewelry, so you can definitely check that out if you'd like to. Or you can check out my GoFundMe if you would like to support my content and my projects. Alright, so let's get off to the video. Alright, so I have been collecting decks for several years now, and I read both tarot and oracle cards professionally. So this is a deck collection that I have really nurtured and gotten to know very well. Some not so much as others, and I'll tell you guys what my personal feelings are on each deck. These aren't in any particular order, and I'm just going to flip through them quickly so that I don't have to put up like 20 videos. But I did just count and I have over 60 decks, so this should be a pretty full deck collection video. I probably will do an update one day, but it's probably going to be a little while. So if you have, again, if you have any questions, please let me know down below in the comments. And there's a few which don't actually have their boxes with them, so I'm going to try and remember the names, and I'll tell you guys about the books and stuff like that when I get to them. But so this is kind of a casual video, so bear with me. I have a lot of decks. Anyway, alright, so I'm going to start with the tarot videos, and then I'm going to do the oracle videos, and they'll probably go up in, over the course of, a few weeks. So, yeah. Alright, so let's get on to the decks. Alright, so I just have my decks kind of piled up next to me, so I'm just going to kind of grab the first ones that are in my vicinity and just kind of go with the ones that pop up. So, alright, so the first deck is the Lynn Strider Tarot. This is a deck I've got probably around May, so a handful of months ago. My best friend got this for me for my birthday. I've used this deck a handful of times, so I don't really know it super well, but the readings I have done with it have been amazing and very deep and intense. This deck is definitely a no punches pulled kind of deck, and the art is really interesting. I will say that some of the pictures I absolutely adore. Other ones almost feel like they don't belong in the deck. There's some more modern pictures, and that just kind of doesn't work for me. I like more of the, let's see, make sure this is clear for you guys. I like more of the animal, oh, some of these are upside down. I like more of the animal pictures in this deck, and more of the abstract ones like this. Oh, I love the kitty cats. So that gives you kind of a good idea of what this deck looks like. I don't usually do reversals, so I'm kind of surprised there's so many upside down cards in this deck. I love this one with the lemurs. Anyway, so that's the Lynn Strider Tarot. That comes with a pretty big book, and from what I've experienced, the book is really, really awesome. And this is what the back of the Lynn Strider looks like, so that's really lovely. Alright, so this next deck I purchased while I was in Australia. I actually purchased it a month or two after a few weeks after I got there. This is the Klimt Tarot, or the Golden Tarot of Klimt. So this deck is based off of the art by Gustav Klimt. The cardstock is alright. It comes with a little white book, but if you love, Klimt, you'll adore this deck. It's, there's those decks where it's really kind of ruined by, the bad cardstock or whatever, but this deck is just so stunning that it's just an amazing deck to have in a collection, especially if you really like this kind of abstract art. I will say that this deck, the pictures aren't super reminiscent of the Rider-Waite. They're very abstract. And so when I got this deck, because I was just starting to read tarot without the book, I did find this one a bit harder to read. I think it'd be a lot easier now because I can just, look at you know, what the card is, and I could read it very easily. But this deck I would probably say is more of an intermediate deck. So if you are just starting out with tarot, I probably wouldn't suggest this deck, even if you do love Klimt. What's amazing is you can see, like, there's actually this, like, gold, like leaf. It's not real gold leaf, but, you know, like, on the deck, and they're just stunning. And this is what the back looks like. And the Klimt Tarot comes with just like a little white book, so it's a pretty basic deck. Alright, so the next deck is the Paulina Tarot, and this is a deck I purchased when I wasn't really reading tarot full time, and so I've never actually really gotten into this deck because when I moved to Australia, it ended up getting packed away. So this is a deck I don't really know too well, but it's a really, really lovely deck. So the cardstock is actually really, really nice. And this is a really unique style deck. There is so much in each card. It's there's definitely a lot to take in. So this is really cool. So yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about this deck. I do have, I think it's Paulina Cassidy who does this. I do have her other deck, the Joie de Vivre deck, which again I haven't used that much either. I was only able to take like 8 decks with me to Australia, so a lot of the decks I actually used in Australia were ones I bought there. So this is one of the ones I haven't been able to delve into, but it is a really lovely deck, and I really love having it in my collection. Compared to the Joie de Vivre Tarot, this is a lot more of like a darker deck, I would say, whereas the Joie de Vivre is a bit more playful. And this deck comes with a little white book as well. Alright, so the next deck is the Deviant Moon Tarot, which I absolutely adore. My current shadow work deck is actually the Tarot of Vampires, but before I delved into that, my shadow work deck was definitely the Deviant Moon. I love these cards. They're a bit thinner than a normal tarot deck and a little longer, and so they're just absolutely stunning. There's nothing about this deck that isn't just epic. This is the borderless edition. And these cards are super strange. I remember when I first saw them, when I first got into tarot, I was a little nervous about tarot, so a deck like this was a bit too confronting image-wise, and so at first I was like, no thank you. But there was just one day when I started looking at these cards online, and I was just like, oh, it's time, I need this deck. This deck is ridiculously unique. I believe he just did the, let's see, what's his name? Patrick Valenza just did a new deck. I don't know how like out there it is. It seems like he's kind of kept it a bit private, but I'm not really sure why that is. I just haven't really seen it out in stores or anything like that. But I'm really excited to get my hands on that because I really do love this deck. There's something about this deck that is really magical. I feel like the readings I do for this are just like really specific, and when I have a client who, when this deck comes in to work with a client, it's like a very specific feeling, and it's like, oh, we're gonna work with the Deviant Moon tarot today. So it's a very unique deck, and I do adore this deck. It's one of my older decks that I got when I first started collecting. So this is one I really got to know better as I really stepped into reading professionally. And I did use this deck for readings professionally while I was in Australia. So this was definitely one of the decks I took with me. And yeah, it's pretty unique. And this deck comes with a little white book, but I believe there's also a companion book you can get separately that he wrote later on, which I hear is pretty amazing. And it's also has to do with his creation of the deck, so that was pretty unique as well. Alright, so the next deck is the Impressionist Tarot, and I really haven't done a lot of readings with this. In fact, this is one of the decks I think I may gift at some point. But it's a really unique deck, and I really like it. I just wish it had more, like, of the type of Impressionist paintings that I like. This deck is actually based off Impressionist paintings, but they were created for the tarot itself, if I believe correctly. The thing about this deck, which is really cool, is it's really, like, well thought out in the sense of, like, how it's done. Like, for instance, the back of the tarot looks like the back of a painting, which I think is really, really cool. And then the front has, like, the frame, so it looks like the, the paintings itself. The thing is, I honestly just don't super connect with the paintings in this deck, which is kind of a bummer because I was really excited. It also doesn't have like the words on it, which kind of bothers me. So they're just a little harder to read. Now, I will admit that I have not read with this deck since I got back from Australia, so I might have a completely different feeling about it now. But that's the only real experience I've had with this deck. I just don't really feel like the pictures really, let me see if I can get this into focus, guys. I just don't really feel inspired by the pictures very much. I do love this one though, this is pretty. It's just not my favorite. But you can see how it's definitely reminiscent of a lot of the famous Impressionist paintings. Yeah, I don't know. I don't look at these and go, oh yeah, tarot. So I think I do love this. See, I wish there was more paintings like this, more of like the Vincent van Gogh pictures, but there just really aren't. The cardstock is alright. That's a Ten of Swords. It's kind of cool. But again, I haven't read with this in a while, so honestly, I might feel totally different about this if I actually sat down and did a legitimate, like, reading. But yeah, like, that's a Two of Coins. Like, how does that really represent the Two of Coins, you know? Oh, and also the Major Arcana don't have the words either, so you really have to just kind of go off of the pictures or know the numbers of the cards, which, as much as I do know most of them, like, in a deck like this where I don't really feel like it really expresses the meanings very well, I think I'd have a hard time reading it. And this deck also comes with a little white book. Alright, so this next deck you guys are all probably going to recognize immediately. This is the Ciccoli Tarot by Nicoletta Ciccoli. This deck was actually gifted to me for my birthday by the amazing Owlmoon513, Racine, who actually lives in my town and works at the shop that I buy a lot of my tarot from. So for my birthday a few years ago, I wasn't sure if I should get this, and she's like, I'm just getting it for you. So I was like, okay. This deck was when I had a much smaller collection, and I did use this a lot, and but recently I really haven't used it really at all. This is one of the decks that I didn't take with me to Australia. Let's see if I can get this clear for you guys. Yeah. So I actually recently haven't worked with this, and I really would like to. The problem is right now I have a handful of decks that I absolutely adore and I work with constantly, and so because those are the decks I usually use, I find that I don't often, you know, rummage through my decks and try to find a deck that I'm not using as much. But now that they're all out, I think I'm going to really try to explore these decks further because they're really amazing. The only thing I don't like, and I think Racine said this as well, is they don't actually have, like, you know, well, they just have the symbols to tell you what they are, and then they have like the king and queen and stuff, so it's kind of hard to tell what they are right off. But this art is so unique, and I love it. It's definitely great for like inner shadow child work stuff. And I actually, now that I'm like looking at this, I haven't looked at this deck in ages. I really do think I want to use this. Currently I'm doing a lot of stuff with shadow work, and so I think this would be a really cool, yeah, look at that, what intense. This would be a really cool deck to dive into. This deck also has a little white book, and yeah, it just comes in a really small box. But this is definitely a very unique tarot deck. This, I will say though, doesn't really follow the Rider-Waite system very much. Like, it's like the meanings might be similar, but the art is definitely its own thing for sure. All right, this next deck was one of those bought on a whim deck. Well, I looked at it on a whim and I really like how it read. I got this in the shop I used to work at in Australia, but it was so not a deck that I would typically buy that I decided not to get it, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it, so when I went in the next time I bought it. This is the Sacred Circle Tarot. I'm gonna go and be like completely honest. This is absolutely not a deck I would normally buy, like at all. The art is not, I don't like the art. It's like, I mean, some of the art's okay. It's just like so not a deck. However, when I did a reading with this, it was really really on point. Like, I couldn't get over how on point it was. I do like that they do have these keywords up here, which I thought was kind of a cool add-on. This does come with like a little white book. I've only used this deck a couple times, but honestly, it has like a really weird, like, special place in my heart, because when I did the reading that I did, it was like really important to what was going on in my life and really helpful. And so honestly, like, for some reason, I just felt like I needed this deck. Like, it was like, you know, when you have like a special moment with someone, like they'll just always be special to you even if you don't like see them ever again. Like, that's how this deck feels. But if you really like this like druidy kind of feel, like, you might actually like this deck. The problem is I don't really like this like realism kind of art. And the borders are weird, like, the whole thing. Like, it's just not my favorite deck visually, but there was something about how it read that I just really adored. So yeah, so this is kind of a unique purchase. I don't know, like, I feel like it's gonna be one of those decks that I'll, like, randomly pull out of nowhere and, like, start reading with, and it'll just be, like, magical when it, like, comes into my space again, but I just, yeah, I don't even know, guys. Like, I don't know why I bought this deck, aside from the reasons I told you, which I don't really think are like specifically good reasons. But like, yeah, I don't know, like, there's nothing about this deck that I like except that reading I did. So anyway, but if you like this deck, it's really good. Like, the cardstock's okay, like, yeah. Am I selling you on this deck? Can you tell? So these cards do have more of like kind of the pips kind of thing, where it's not really like a lot of visual stimulation or like symbolism. It's just like the basics. It's just the swords. It's just the cups. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting deck. Alright, so this next deck is the Tarot of the Hidden Realms, which is actually the first deck I ever bought. I was raised to believe tarot was very devilish, and so I left Christianity, and I had left all of that behind, but tarot still had stuck in my brain as something that was devilish, even though I didn't believe in the devil anymore. But I had a really hard time wrapping my head around it, and so I saw this deck, and because it is fairy and elf related, somehow it just made it easier for me to step into, because I was really intrigued about tarot, and I'd already been doing oracle decks, and so I wanted to explore tarot, so I decided to do this. So honestly, this deck I haven't used a lot either. It's funny, all the decks I've been using like a ton are like, I haven't shown you guys yet, but anyway, so this was the deck that I first was like, you know, introduced to tarot, and it's really funny that I chose this deck, because it really isn't, let's see if I can, it's really not Rider-Waite based at all. So I don't know if this was really the best tarot deck for me to start off, but it's definitely has a special place in my heart. It's an absolutely stunning deck. I do use it very occasionally, but now I have other decks that I just, you know, identify more with for tarot in general. But I, like, if you're into Fae energy, this is definitely an amazing deck to do. It's stunning. The difference with this deck is that there are much more close-up pictures. It's not so much like scenes, but rather people, and that is a unique part of this deck. This deck comes with a really big book, which is full of a lot of amazing information, so I definitely recommend it. This is a stunning deck, and I'm so glad this deck is in my collection. But yeah, it's a very unique piece. Alright, so this next deck is the Raven's Prophecy Tarot, and I love this deck. I haven't used it a whole lot, but the readings I've done with it are amazing. Now, I will say, when I did my first reading with it, I was not drawn to use this deck. Like, I bought it because I loved the art, and I was like, oh my god, it's amazing. And then I did a reading, and I was like, oh, like, am I not going to feel it with this deck? Which I was really bummed about. But then when I got back from Australia and I re-stepped into this deck, I got some amazing readings, and so, like, yes, I think it just took me a minute to actually, like, integrate into the energy of this deck. The only thing I don't like about this one is the orange borders kind of throw it for me. This deck would be amazing if it was borderless. I mean, I don't mind this so much down here, but if they could just, like, not have the borders. I've never trimmed a deck. I don't think I ever will. I'm not really like that type of person, but if I were to trim a deck, I'd consider this one, because I just don't think the orange really does the rest of the art justice. But this is a very, very unique deck. I haven't really delved into the book too much, so I'm not sure if like it has a lot of different meanings for the cards, but this definitely doesn't go along with like the traditional like Rider-Waite symbolism. But you can definitely read it with those like ideas in mind. This actually kind of reminds me of the Wild Unknown, and I know this came out after that. I wonder if they you know, they kind of took that idea from it. But the colors and the soft feeling of this art is just absolutely amazing. So this is a really beautiful deck, and I definitely am looking forward to using it more in the future. Like I said, I just have so many decks, it's really hard to really delve into each one. I think one day when I like fully commit to it, I'm going to like put all decks away and just take out one deck, you know, one Oracle deck and one Tarot deck at a time, and like use both of them for like a month and just like really like delve into each one. I think that'd be good, but I just don't have the time or the commitment right now to do that. I like the Tarot decks I'm using consistently, and that's just how it's working. I know that if I'm supposed to use one of these decks, they'll speak to me, and they do. They will pop out at me, and I'll start using them like a lot out of nowhere, and it's really cool. So I'm sure this deck will come out to play at some point, wow, is that intense, in the future. And like I said, I think I said, this does have a big book that comes with it, and which is a really awesome book, so yeah.